We're on.
It's caucus time.
It's caucus time.
I forgot to respond to you on X. You asked me the
right.
fateful question, what time is it? And I looked at my watch, and then I realized I don't have a watch. So I started looking up cheap watches for sale and got kind of distracted.
Well, I got kind of distracted because as we were about to hit the button, I realized, oh my gosh, why did I just adjust our background when we should have a Christmas background? So I did that at the last second coming into the live stream. So for our podcast listeners, you'll never know. You know why? Because post-production is marvelous for everyone who's watching us record this live. First of all, welcome. Second of all, Merry Christmas. We've already kind of done that, but it's time. We've been decorating the halls around here. We have our Christmas tree up. We have our mini caucus tree right here.
The caucus tree.
The caucus tree. This is, not only is it our mini caucus tree, this is an homage. Homage? Homage?
Homage.
Which do you prefer? Obviously,
I like homage.
Homage. Okay. All right, homage. Homage Mohan. This is our homage to the original caucus co-host, Mr. Jordan Henry.
God rest his soul.
Well, I was going to say something, and then I thought he's not dead. He just doesn't, he's not our co-host anymore. But the original co-host, Mr. Jordan Henry, put together this tree out of the little trimmings of all of the extra things to make the fake tree look not that fake.
Wow.
One of my extra fake trees. So he spindled them up together and then paper clipped a tiny star that he cut out, and it stayed.
It's beautiful.
He couldn't, he could have taken his star, but he couldn't take the trimmings because they're from a tree that I brought into the office that's living here because my house isn't big enough to accommodate the number of trees that my wife and I would like eventually. So here it is.
You should see my dad's tree collection. I think last year I counted 25.
You're wow. Hold on. So first of all, your dad is a multiple tree person. How do you feel about this?
I think it's awesome.
Okay.
And I grew up thinking that was normal. And
then you go to other people's house. What's wrong with you, Grinches?
You only have one Christmas tree. What's going on here?
Oh my gosh.
That being said, they're not all huge. There's about 4 full-size, like 6 full-size, fully decorated Christmas trees. Indoors, and then maybe 3 on the front porch, and then there's more, but they're maybe like this tall off the table. They're not your full size Christmas morning Christmas trees.
Not your full size Christmas morning Christmas trees. Okay, that's acceptable. This is acceptable. I love the multiple Christmas tree thing. We aspire to be multiple Christmas tree people at our house. It just hasn't quite happened yet because we don't have the space for it. But big ones, little ones, all over. We do have like a little display instead of a Christmas village, which I suppose I'm not allowed to do until I'm at least 55 to 60 plus. I feel like that seems, no offense, everybody, but I feel like we've got our version of it, which is, by the way, I'm making sure our sound is actually, it's on for the live stream. Okay, I'm just making sure. We have our piano, since we don't have a fireplace mantle, is just covered with trees.
Yeah.
And like little bitty ones, and not decorated. Like one is decorated. Little bitty ceramic ones, wooden ones, tiny little frosted ones. If we found a random tree at Goodwill, we bought it, we put it into our tree collection. Now we have the enchanted forest of Kauai with our piano, because we have a little electric piano at home. So that's as close as we get. But there you go, multiple trees.
That's pretty cool.
Is okay.
We went from 0 to 1 this year. Last year we didn't have one. But
you didn't have a tree?
No.
Not yet, or were you out of town and just didn't bother?
I mean, we were gonna be out of town for Christmas at other places, but now with a kid, he's gotta know what it's like to have a tree in the house. So that really kicked us into high gear. We've got a bit of a Christmas village. We inherited a lot of ornaments from a relative, and many of them are little houses or things like that, and way too many ornaments to put on a single tree. So we set them up, a little Christmas village type thing.
There you go. Okay, that's fun. There's a lot of fun Christmas traditions. By the way, if we didn't, you know where you are. If you're listening to this on the podcast, you know where you are. If you're watching us, you can obviously see where you are. This is Unauthorized Caucus. Welcome on in. Ryan, Mason, Ryan Height, Mason Mohan. I realized I could have grammatically structured that better.
And if for some reason you don't know where you are, maybe call somebody you trust and they can help you out with figuring that out. If you've woken up somewhere and we are now playing over the loudspeakers to you,
this is not the dystopian novel that you were warned about.
Anyway.
You are in fact in a good dream. But Welcome on in,
welcome.
Unauthorized Caucus. Unauthorizedcaucus.com. Sign up for everything. You get the emails, the notes. Make sure you subscribe on Rumble. If you want to support us, you can do that at the website directly or on Rumble directly. Obviously, your viewership, following, and sharing this helps very much. Jump into the comment section or the chat. Let us know what you think today as we go through. Obviously, we have Christmas rabbit trails in the snow.
Christmas
abounding.
cheer.
Christmas cheer. They're not
filled
rabbit
with
trails.
Christmas cheer.
We have Christmas cheer that needs to happen. You were about to make a point. What
Well,
point?
I was about to get into our non-main topic that maybe should be our main topic, considering it's drawing much more attention than our actual main topic we selected for today.
It's true.
But our non-main topic, the DQ, or
The DQ.
DHQ, Die Hard question, whether or not it's a Christmas movie. And I think we're on the same page on this, but...
Well, for the folks who have, here you go. For everyone who's listening to the sound of our voice, if you're live, if you're post, if you're whatever, is Die Hard a Christmas movie? This has taken the internet by storm. And not only is it trending as a question, but the people who deny that it's a question are in fact helping the question trend by denying that this question is a real question. They're saying it's just an internet hoax to get people to confirm or believe something that no one actually thinks. Yet they're still talking about it and trending the topic, how you like them apples. Mason, is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
I'm not even agnostic on the question. I've always been apathetic to the question, but it is a question nonetheless. And being men of the Western tradition, we must answer all questions regardless of their importance. So I think it is. I truly think it is. I think that you, just the meme, this question being its own meme, has just put it in the domain of, because it's Christmas time and we're talking about Die Hard. People don't talk about Die Hard throughout the rest of the year this much.
No,
we
they
wait
do
till
not.
Christmas time to talk about Die Hard, and it's probably talked about more than most other Christmas movies. Like, you don't see people talking about It's a Wonderful Life or Muppets Christmas Carol, which they should be talking about it this much. Muppets Christmas Carol, that is.
Which is inarguably the best Christmas movie of all time.
Yes.
Inarguable.
It is my
The
one,
Muppet Christmas
my
Carol.
one that I must watch every Christmas season.
Yes, we haven't gotten to it. Well, we have another one. I don't know. Okay. The new animated Grinch, I say the new, it's from 2018, I guess it is. The Benedict Cumberbatch one is a favorite in our household.
I still have you. You
love
recommended
it.
that last year, and we should tell our viewers that last year we did a special
did.
Christmas caucus where we made a tier list ranking of Christmas movies. I think we both made one, and we kind of compared back and forth.
did.
That we will link to that in the show notes because it's worth watching.
Yeah, we'll make sure and pull that one up and link to it. But I will say, you go back and find that. The Grinch, it's a classic Christmas movie. Everyone knows the original. Boris Karloff does it. I mean, it's fantastic. It's a cult classic. However, being honest, the Dr. Seuss book and even the original cartoon, great music, good cultural stuff. But the question is, like, there's no character development. The Grinch just all of a sudden his heart grows 3 sizes bigger because he hears a song. Well, in the newer one, they actually unpack that, and there's a lot of making sense. So for kids, I love it because it really teaches about, hey, you can make yourself quite miserable out of selfishness and self-centeredness, but you can choose to undo that and put other people first. Kindness and putting other people first and yourself last, it's a wonderful message, and they unpack it so much better. Besides that, it's 100% clean. I don't even think there's no potty humor or anything, which in today's world of kids movies, sight unseen is hard to find a recommendation for. But this one, I guarantee you could turn it on with the strictest of we don't let our kids watch certain things. Rightly so. I don't want my kids influenced by a bunch of garbage. You could turn this on and be 100% okay. It's not even just major objectionable content is missing, it's minor. And that to me is rare in today's world. This is Illumination Studios, by the way. This is the Despicable Me people.
So isn't that shift kind of like a shift into the modernist approach of putting culture over nature, like nurture over nature, that there are no... It's kind of like a blank slateism, isn't it? That rather than the Grinch having a biological mechanism that just makes his heart grow 3 times stronger once he hears that music, rather it's entirely social conditioning that leads to his conversion to the Christmas spirit from the Grinchism. So,
I'd say so.
yeah.
It's good. But I rabbit trailed us for
I'm
a
saying
second
that's
there.
a bad thing. I'm saying that's a consequence of the modern age.
No, it is a consequence of the modern age. But pause. Run me back through this for a second, because I was hitting the button on something trying to find, so I'm not forgetting this later. What are we postulating about nature versus nurture? Because I thought I understood you, and then you took a turn there.
What you're saying is like the shift of the new Grinch, that it explores the kind of that he's socially conditioned, that it changes him on a emotional, social level. That's like the nurture side of things, whereas the original Dr. Seuss Grinch and cartoon Grinch, he is rather transformed on a biological level.
Well, yeah, but instead of biological and nurturing, I would tend to say that in the old Grinch, he's changed on a nonsensical level, and in this one, he makes choices. I don't think it's so much the nature versus nurture. What I think it is in the old one, there's no reason. There's lots of rhyme, but there's no reason. Let's be real. Lots of rhyme, no reason.
This is the real Christmas
but in this
debate
one, though,
right here. Forget Die Hard.
Well, and that's the thing. To me, this is actually a really good picture of kind of our sin nature world, because everyone would like to talk about, the humanist tendency. It's your outside circumstances. We complain about Marxism all the dang time on the show. It's your outside circumstances. Man is innately good. No, he's not. Man is innately selfish. So, in this instance, if a child, the Grinch, if you have bad experiences, you internalize, I'm done with this. I'm going to do blah, 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 blah. You make all these choices. Well, guess what? The only person that can change that is you. It's not the outside world that hates you and it was all their fault and no one loved you and you were an orphan or whatever the Grinch is. No. You have chosen to live your life selfishly, hating other people and making yourself and other people around you miserable. You can change, and only you can change by your choices. And to me, that is a very Christian message, because it's not just that you can't do anything about your circumstances. Despite your circumstances, you can make a choice. And I mean, isn't that the whole thing? Choosing to love others and to serve, others and to seek the Lord. And it's not that all of your circumstances and the sin nature that we live in and the broken world go away. And it's not because God takes them away. You make them in spite of all of that, because this is the goal. This is the worth. I think that's an inherently Christian message. And I love the fact that this Grinch brings it out. And I don't think it's nature and nurture so much as circumstances happening to you versus decision making in spite of circumstances.
But can Grinches be saved?
Listen, Calvin. Here's the this is. We could talk about this.
Or are they inherently evil creatures, the Grinch species?
Yes, both.
But they can be saved.
We are inherently evil creatures by our birth, and yet we can be saved. Right?
Yeah, but isn't the Grinch like a kind of animal of sorts?
Well, obviously, Who's and Grinches don't exist, but the lessons we're teaching do. Don't make me rhyme the rest of the episode in Dr. Seuss style. I'll do it too.
He's green and he's furry and
he's green and he's furry and he's always in a hurry to destroy the Christmas that you and I love. But no, that was actually Limerick style. I'm not going to break it down. We're going to stop now.
We're going to break into song and dance on Unauthorized Caucus in our debate over the Grinch.
It is definitely and this is the thing. There is no, in my mind, there's no nonsensicalism. Merry Christmas, Gwen, in the Rumble chat. There's no nonsensicalism to talking about this stuff, because each of these things matters. The storytelling, Christmas movies, Christmas time. First of all, the Christmas season is one of the two most important parts, the bedrocks of our faith. Christ was born, and then Christ was resurrected. I mean, honestly, right behind it is Christ's death, but frankly, without the resurrection, that's the linchpin. These are huge things. I love talking about them, and there's always, even if it's an animated movie, there's serious themes. Like if you're honestly trying to teach yourself and little people, there's always serious themes. So now, on that note, even though we look forward to the birth of the Savior, back to the original topic at hand, it's not Christmas to me until I see Hans Gruber fall into Nakatomi Plaza. So Die Hard is a Christmas movie. I went there. You do this. If you're watching this, let us know. Either respond, hop in the chat, and let us know, or we'll post a tweet and we'll do something like a retweet if you agree, like if you disagree, and we'll count it up and figure it out and see where there's our public poll. Either that or Twitter has polls now. I can just do a poll on X. Yeah. We'll do a poll on X. All right, everybody.
Well, I think the in regards to the DQ, that the anti-DQers believe or they maintain that because only the setting is Christmas and the actual meat, the plot, the subject matter is, the themes are not necessarily Christmas oriented. It is therefore not a Christmas movie. But as we have been discussing throughout this morning, that can be applied to many films that are regarded as Christmas movies as well, such as It's a Wonderful Life. Mm-hmm. That movie is centered around money, actually, and getting rich and exploiting the working class by that epic banker guy who is the good guy in that movie, I'm pretty sure. It's been a while since I've seen it.
It's been a while.
Yeah. But it's not, there's no Santa. There's an angel, but the angel is not Santa. Home Alone, another example. The setting is Christmas, but they could have just as well been going on vacation in the middle of the summer, and it could have been the exact same plot. Like the exact same plot,
right?
Pretty much. So, Home Alone is a Christmas movie, which I don't think people even debate that. If Home Alone is a Christmas movie, Die Hard is a Christmas movie for the exact same reasons.
Yep, I don't think you're wrong at all. Well, there you go. We've had our controversial topic of the day. Now it's time to talk about politics.
Yeah, something less controversial.
Something less controversial.
One of our viewers says, "I'm not sure if I've ever watched Die Hard." Well, I only watched it a few years ago. It's not exactly your most family fun action or Christmas movie like The Grinch. I think it's a fun movie, good movie, but it's an action movie. It's not like a. Yeah, the similarities to Home Alone really end to begin with what I've just described.
Pretty much altogether, yes. Oh man, it is. And by the way, do you think Die Hard is a Christmas movie? Die Hard 2 gets even better because there's snowmobiles.
I don't think I've seen that.
Die Hard 2 is fantastic. That's not the new ones, but 1, 2, and 3. There you go. There's your original trilogy of awesomeness. The neighbor goes to church. That's true. You know what? And in Home Alone, someone made this point. And here, back to our, I know we're going to keep talking about Christmas movies, but back to our conversation about the intersection of faith and culture when it comes to media. I heard a conversation, and I actually thought about it. True, Home Alone is one of the last films I can think of, one of the last major super pop culture films I can think of where church was at the center of it. Literally a church building, and then going to a service, and the the grandfather watching his granddaughter, and they're estranged, or he is from his son. That's one of the last major movies I can think of that Hollywood created that is centrally focused one of the locations on a church. I mean, I'm sure that there's others, but I can't think of any off the top of my head. Like that is a cultural element that is kind of gone. I mean, you think about it, it wasn't that uncommon in a lot of originals. You go back, when we talked about, I forget if it was off air or on air, It's a Wonderful Life. I mean, what do you have? You have George Bailey praying, dear God, please just fix this, like all these different things. And of course, Clarence and the guardian angel is part of it. But there's still a spiritual element to it. There was even a spiritual element to Home Alone, for crying out loud. It was not exactly super present. They weren't going in for prayerful reflection, but still a church and a nativity was featured, and that is very long gone by the wayside. But I see a resurgence glimmer of it every once in a while. There's little things where I'm surprised at how overt something becomes when it comes to returning to faith, especially around Christmas time, which is kind of unavoidable. That's part of the story. But
one very unexpected instance of this is the Daredevil TV series, the Marvel character that his it was.
Which one? Aren't there like 5 iterations of that now?
It's whatever one came out a couple years ago that they're losing a lot of the central themes as they reuse that character. I don't know. I don't really watch Marvel stuff, but that series is very good, and I'm pretty sure the writers were, or at least one of them was a devout Catholic, and faith plays a very central role in that series. That even as there's like the external conflicts, there's like the internal conflict of faith as he. And a very central member of the cast or of the characters is the priest that he's interacting with.
Right.
And, so I think that's a example of but like you're saying, there are very few examples of that now, and Disney is not pursuing that aspect of it anymore. They're rather just adding it to the Marvel slop output machine.
Yes, and it is a slop output machine. That's exactly what it's become. Let me go ahead. Let's dive into our topic at hand. But before that, I'll remind you, we did the goodies, Unauthorized Caucus. Make sure you go sign up for the emails, the notifications there. Over here on Rumble, if you're watching right now live, hit the big green button and subscribe. If you're listening to this on a podcast, rate and review 5 stars, please. Would love that, but also want to hear your feedback wherever it is you're listening, Spotify or all the rest. I forget who doesn't allow you to actually type versus just rate with the stars. Do all of those things. Send the link to someone because even here in the midst of Christmas movie talk, there's always something serious. But of course, and kind of most of all, make sure you go to trexinc.com. There you'll see on the screen, if you're watching, some brand new stuff. They have a holiday seasonal collection. They've taken off viral. They've gone viral in Europe with their Nirvana lookalike T-shirt, Navidad. It's fantastic. But I am even a fan of more. There's my favorite one. It has the 3 wise men on it. Tonight we ride. It's fantastic. It's great. If you're watching today on Thursday, you still have a chance. Well, actually, today and tomorrow, anytime the next couple of days, you might get it in before Christmas if you go and hit the button now to make your order. I checked on it, at least here to the Midwest. Shipping was between December 16th and 23rd you could receive it. So you've got chances still. trexinc.com. Go thank our sponsor of this program. Use the promo code CAUCUS30. That'll get you a big old fat discount on all of your Christmas goodies. Of course, there's tons of other stuff. There's even New Year's Lord of the Rings references. I saw some great stuff over there. Plus all the mugs, our own stuff. Join the revolution. You know, we inspired the first ever T-shirt and mug from the show. Do it all at trexinc.com. Let them know that you appreciate their sponsorship of the program. Use promo code CAUCUS30. That is a great place to go and do some stuff. Now, to the topic at hand, as I crack my knuckles.
The cabinet.
The cabinet. We've talked a lot about who's coming in, who's there, but now they've been running around the Hill having meetings, and we're starting to get some pretty interesting snippets of what they want to do. And this isn't Donald Trump putting out the big Agenda 47 policy statements that are kind of broad and sweeping, and you see it and you go, good for you, Donald Trump. But how are you going to actually do that? No. Now we're actually starting to hear from the nuts and bolts people who are going to be at the head levels of each of these places. And even if it's just a flippant remark walking along the halls of Congress, they got cameras all over and people are yelling out questions. It still gives a really interesting, note to see like what they're thinking, where they're going. So I mentioned a few. We got Pete Hegseth. Looks like he's turned around his nomination, chances. He had some good meetings because before they were all, and it's hard to tell because it's really hard to tell because you never know. Like when mainstream media likes to talk about, so and so's chances are sinking, but really, or just you, or you telling me that?
Right.
You can never tell what kind of
sensationalist.
Yeah, exactly. It's the hyperbolic drama. But it did look like there were a few people who really didn't like Pete Hegseth, and it was a little rocky there. That seems to have potentially turned around. Joni Ernst was one of the holdouts, maybe, and she had a nice statement, although she didn't say she was voting for him. But still, it was a little nice. So Pete Hegseth, but then there's a bunch of others. Linda McMahon in the education department, you kind of wonder what that's going to look like. Chris Wright in energy, I'm super excited about. Howard Lutnick. There's tons that are question marks, and we're starting to hear pieces of what they want to do, which obviously you don't want to reveal your hand, but we're starting to hear some.
Right.
So what are a few high points for you? And for the purpose of this conversation, I don't want to just talk about who we do and don't like, what policy points we do and don't like. We could go over that. But as far as who has said what that you actually think is an attainable goal, or is it an attainable goal, DOGE and DOGE nodes hooking into all of the departments, what are some of the highlights you look at and go, now that I think is going to work and be a good idea, or I'm not so sure about this one. What's struck you here in these last few days?
Well, I'm more so thinking in terms of viewing the cabinet as a whole after having gone through, I think, all of the names at this point, because there were a lot that I was unfamiliar with before he mentioned them, or before they were, put up there as an option. But I think it's interesting how there are a few that are very specialized to that role, where it's like, okay, you would look at the resume and be like, oh yes, you're perfect for this role. Like Russ Vought, for instance, where it's like, okay, he literally had this role before. He can definitely do this again. Or like John Ratcliffe, who served in Trump's previous administration and has already served a role under Trump in national security, where it's like, okay, yes, you've proven yourself Trump knows he can trust you, and you were the man for the job. But for the most part, a lot of these people, as I'm looking through their pros and cons and putting together lists, is for a lot of them, the cons is like doesn't really have any related experience. You know, but that's not necessarily a con, because Trump is not necessarily selecting for specifically related experience, like Linda McMahon, who worked with the WWE, and it's like there's no clear relationship between the WWE and the Department of Education, like at all.
I don't know. There were a lot of formative years for a lot of people.
Yeah, but it is very it's a very bizarre pick, like from the outside, but then you realize that Trump is not picking these people because, okay, they check the boxes of, okay, you have the exact correct institutional, career leading up to this point that it makes sense that you should be in this position. Where, like, I do think there are people that could fill those roles like that, but I think Trump is selecting more based on both personality and just these general skills that they have. And Trump is very good, Trump has a lot of experience in business and management and in being president. So I think he knows what to look for and like what the exact right factors are for, excuse me, determining if somebody is going to fit well in a certain role or bring something new to the table and shake things up in a way that's useful. And I think that's maybe like 60% of his cabinet kind of leans toward that end of things, like, oh, this is somebody that's a bit of a shakeup that's going to bring something new to the table, rather than, okay, you just check all the exact boxes that we're looking for. But also, I think it's interesting how some of them play off of each other.
Right.
And
it's an interesting set of dynamics altogether.
Because Tulsi has been nominated, but there are also a few people that are a little more hawkish with their foreign policy preferences, but a lot of times those are directed towards getting strategic and manufacturing superiority over China, which I wouldn't exactly call that hawkish. I would just call that like being basically America first. But for example, like Doug Burgum versus Chris Wright have very different perspectives on climate change. I wouldn't say very different, but differing perspectives, where Doug Burgum is more so kind of like climate change friendly.
Right. He's on at least, maybe not the man-made crisis crazy train. Right. But he is definitely into the net zero agenda.
And he's made concessions there.
Reductions.
Whereas Chris Wright is like going to have a mental breakdown if there's not oil spilling into the oceans.
And the same,
he needs that.
And the same with Lee Zeldin at EPA. And see, that's one that I actually asked Greg Wrightstone about this, our friend over at the CO2 Coalition. They do a lot of really good stuff on this, and that's where he said, I don't know. Lee Zeldin, Doug Burgum don't really care for their records on this at all. However, Chris Wright is a dude. Chris Wright's an absolute stud when it comes to fighting back. In fact, I pulled this up. I wonder if I can get it here. But we don't need to play the clip, though. But I mean, basically, Chris Wright, if you're not familiar with him, is Al Gore's worst nightmare. Like, he truly does just dispel the climate propaganda nonsense with great gusto. He's very good at it. So you look at a situation like that and say, okay, I don't really care for the Doug Burgum or the Lee Zeldin pick in those places. But here's the question then, are they teachable? Are they open? Because Chris Wright, as the Department of Energy head, is going to have a very high position in the cabinet of pulling people along. Is he more committed to fighting climate insanity than they are to their net zero, whatever concessions they've made? It really is going to be an interesting push and pull when it comes to the cabinet as a whole. Did Trump ever use the phrase team of rivals or was that described?
I think that people have just described it that
way.
Well,
Kennedy said that, didn't he?
Okay.
I think RFK said something about, like, he said to the world, Trump told me what he wants. And this was before the victory of the election or anything else. So it was all just highly prospective.
Right.
But I think it was RFK who first said something to the effect of Trump wants a team of rivals. He doesn't want people who just agree with him on everything. Which, there's something to be said for that. When the point isn't to just use the government blob to your own policy preferences, which largely I like Trump's policy preferences, but the point is to destroy the blob itself, which demands uniformity and everyone shoving in with this.
Right.
That to me is a very interesting concept, because destruction of the blob, the system, I would say almost is more important than any single one of these policy issues.
Right. Well, and just not letting the blob operate autonomously. Like for the last 4 years with Biden, like you think he's wrangling all his cabinet members, and like, you know, he's at the beach, he's eating ice cream, he's taking a nap right now. Whereas Trump is an executive. Like that's what he's been doing his whole life. He's been leading and he's been commanding and, you know, looking at the pieces and seeing what needs to be done and how we get there the most effective way. So it's not so much like Biden has to get his like ideologically aligned cabinet members and just like plop them in and they just do their thing. Whereas, and I think that was kind of similar to Trump 2016, not because of a fault with Trump, other than just lack of experience being president and not being a entrenched politician that's been doing this his whole life, where, you know, a lot of people popped out of the woodwork and, you know, recommended this guy, we need this guy in this position, which you do get a lot of those kind of like blobbish, we're just going to operate our department autonomously and do our thing. Whereas having people with conflicting interests or conflicting beliefs in different departments plays them off against one another, which prevents some of the bad stuff from coming up. But it's also that people aren't in the cabinet this time around just for them to do their jobs and kind of be in their own lane. No, they're there to be under Trump, and Trump is going to work with them to institute his agenda.
I think that, yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how this all works, because there will be some places like one of the interesting choices to me this whole time has been Pete Hegseth. Obviously, Department of Justice, there needs to be a sledgehammer there. Matt Gaetz would have been that sledgehammer. I'm not quite sure about Pam Bondi, although on some of the basic rooting out of corruption, she may do a good job. I'm not without hope there. But like DOD, Pete Hegseth, very, very interesting. But also the Pentagon, the defense complex over there, the military-industrial complex, holy cow. This is an area that really is going to require a very strong personality who, I mean, I hope he's a nice part of this team of rivals cabinet, but I don't really need him to be at cabinet meetings. I just need him all day, every day to be destroying wokeness in the military, the nonsense bureaucracy built up around our warfighting institutions, the institutions built up inside of what should just be, I mean, the Department of War. Like this, there is so much there that has to be burned out, so much rot and decay and just calcified nonsense that's stuck. It has to be gotten rid of. There are some of these where I don't know exactly how, I'm curious to see how Chris Wright at the Department of Energy and Sean Duffy at the Department of Transportation are going to work with each other and kind of play the whole thing, because they're going to be the people holding the keys on this electric vehicle mandate. That's going to have interesting repercussions around other places. I'd like to see how they interact with the cabinet. I don't care if Pete Hegseth shows up at a cabinet meeting. Pete Hegseth is going to have his hands busy over at the Pentagon dealing out death blows to the deep state. There's your alliteration for the day. Dealing death blows, deep state. Boom. I just laid down, anyway, it was my Seussical Department of Military Industrial Complex
Feeling Seussical today.
Feeling Seussical.
But to answer your question about which policies I actually think are interesting, and I mean, in terms of specific policies, well, there's been some new names that have popped up, but a specific policy that popped up over the last few days is Trump wants to roll back the restriction on ICE with hunting down illegals in schools and hospitals and such, which I think is epic. Not the hunting down phraseology, but rather that there, if you're in this country illegally, there is nowhere you can hide, and justice will be served, and you will be deported. And I think Tom Homan is the man for that. But I'm also interested in David Sachs and the fact that Trump has an AI and crypto czar at all, which is juxtaposing that with what would have been Harris's administration, where Bitcoin is only for criminals, and she probably doesn't even know what AI is. These are, and it doesn't really matter what you think about them. If you think like, oh, crypto's all a bubble, or if you think it's the future, or if you think AI is all a bubble, and like, okay, it can make some funny images and write terrible poetry, but like it's never going to be more than that. In both cases, finding institutional applications for both blockchain technology and artificial intelligence technology, or providing guidelines to prevent those, is very important and sets up America for the future. It's a very forward-looking thing, because, like with China, to China, AI just means having a very effective surveillance state that's able to predictively, figure out what people are going to do and deal with them. And okay, that's the direction AI. That's a very powerful use case for artificial intelligence. And if the government isn't involved in that, or the government isn't putting guardrails around that, it's going to be China doing it here, or Western corporations, which also means China in a lot of cases doing it here, and they have been doing it here. I mean, that's what, social media companies already use AI to get a sense of what's going on with people, and so it's not like the government can just sit back and be hands off about big questions like this. Like they at least have to face the questions and decide, okay, is this something that there needs to be policy over? So that's why I'm interested in there just being a crypto and AI czar at all.
Now here's another that I am very interested in this as well, because the whole area of crypto to me is still a very fascinating topic as far as how it interacts in our monetary policy, which is a mess. Our monetary policy in the U.S. has to be drastically changed, looked at. I don't fill in the blank. Something. You pick your word. But here's another one I'm very interested in. Looking at Howard Lutnick. Over at, is he Commerce? Yeah, Howard Lutnick is the Commerce choice. Where's my thing here? Yeah, Howard Lutnick at Commerce. But at the, oh my gosh, the department is completely eluding me. But Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. These two are interesting to me, because Howard Lutnick, I mean, he's not necessarily Howard Lutnick seems to be on board with the trade agenda that Trump wants to employ in the U.S. Scott Bessent, though, I mean, this is a guy who is, he was the manager of the Soros Fund Management at one point, and all kinds of stuff. But of course, he says there's a lot of Republican right-leaning folks that manage the left-wing money, which is why I can tell you why they're way more successful at their money than you are, because I know what they do with their money. The right's terrible at spending money in the right places. It's kind of interesting, but it comes with an inherent amount of distrust.
You work for the bad guy.
Right, like he literally worked for one of the big bad guys. But so I look at it and I say, well, hold on, for Treasury, what about this? But then I noticed a couple of key things. Scott Bessent, Howard Lutnick, these are not, I'm not equating these two at all. I mean, Scott Bessent, for crying out loud, is a married homosexual man. Well, I should say so-called married, because I don't believe they are. But that's because I think it's a church institution, not a state institution, and then it's a whole separate podcast. That said, though, he does not line up with what you and I believe on a lot of things, but he is on board with Trump's tariff agenda. Howard Lutnick has a lot of things I like and some things I'm not sure about. He is on board with Trump's tariff agenda. And what Trump has talked about with tariffs is not just necessarily using them as a tool to negotiate better trade for the United States. He's actually started floating the whole, hey, we used to fund federal government this way and there wasn't income tax. How about that? And to which I think a lot of people started saying, so what? Do tell. Yes. Because really he's describing an era that is not inside the living memory of any American. I don't think we have anyone alive from pre-income tax. I mean, this was what, 1913, 14, 15? When was this? Because the 16th Amendment was income tax. 17th was direct election of senators, right?
Yeah.
The 16th Amendment.
I think that was really early in the 19th century.
I think it was.
Or 20th century.
Well, because we have a few things. Okay, passed by Congress in 1909. That's 1913. I thought it was around 1913 because also, you know what else happened in 1913?
The Federal Reserve.
Yes, 1913 was a really crappy year for America. The income tax and the Federal Reserve. we made major changes to our monetary policy, to central banking, and to taxation policy in the United States around 1913. I don't think we have anyone alive in America from that. I mean, the oldest person in America. Let's see what DuckDuckGo tells us. Oh, there we go. Never mind. I stand corrected, but barely. Naomi Whitehead supposedly is 104. I say supposedly because I haven't gone and fact-checked this. Supposedly 114 years old, born on September 26, 1910. By the way, here's a whole fun deep dive for you. Super centenarians, citizens or residents who have surpassed 110. As of January 2015, we have very, very few. But let me see here. I mean, super centenarians now. There's not that many. Most have passed away, past 110. But anyway, we may not have at all. I'm not sure if this is entirely verified, but anyway, long story short, thanks for taking the historical deep dive with us there for a half a second. We don't have, like, everyone has forgotten. This is past the American memory. I mean, people have forgotten that we didn't used to educate our children in state-sponsored institutions. I heard someone make this point. It'd be shocking to you if 2 generations after you start turning your kids over to government daycare at the age of 6 months, no one would remember that parents can actually teach their kids how to walk.
Right.
Like, and that's, well, just duh, of course, like, we all help our kids learn how to walk. But no one remembers that you can educate your children. We used to do that. It did not used to be common practice to just send them off to the state government school.
Right.
Now it is. If you change it in a couple of generations, people will forget. People have forgotten what the 1890s and prior looked like when it comes to funding the federal government, tariffs, taxation, and how that worked. Trump is talking about a whole different era. So when I see someone like Scott Bessent, who I go, really? Scott Bessent? Why? You got more than one thing on the list? Well, if that one thing is tariffs, maybe that's big enough because he needs Commerce and Treasury to radically change what and how they do and what they're focused on. Because he's not just talking about, cranking at Governor Trudeau or the President of Mexico. By the way, did you hear about that? We're going to annex Canada.
I can't wait.
Yeah, and it won't be Canada anymore. Once we annex it, we're changing it to Canada. That's what I want, at least. Governor Trudeau, the 51st state of Canada. Actually, that
territory. They don't get seats in the House and Senate.
I thought, well, we were talking about statehood. You know what? If we actually had that, I have a feeling a lot of rural Canada would swing with us.
Maybe do mass deportations.
Although I've seen something along the lines of, like, if you look at the population maps of Canada, it's just like this little line, and then there's nothing but reindeer north. Anyway, I don't know. The point there, though, he's using tariffs with Mexico and Canada, floating the idea to get them to play ball in another particular area. However, what I heard from Trump on the campaign trail tells me that he is not just eyeing tariffs in that way. He's eyeing them in a way to, get people to play ball, to actually punish people correctly and balance trade problems that we have, but also there is a real possibility that he wants to make moves to eliminate the income tax and replace it with tariffs. And that's a very, very interesting concept to me. And if he's found someone who, like, I don't agree with you on most things, but on this one thing, I like you, and I think you'll help me, you can have a job here. That's very interesting to me.
Yeah.
I have to have an open mind about it because I see something like it and I say, would I rather have a Treasury Secretary who's going to be laser focused on this one thing that I agree with him on, or would I rather fight because I don't like him on all these other things that he's more than likely not going to have time to talk about or mess with? It's not going to be his job description under the Trump administration. And then do we trust Trump to actually keep these people focused?
Right.
These are a lot of sincere questions that we have. But, going into it, Scott Bessent, I had a lot of conservatives. Oh, see, Trump's not trustworthy. If you read the National Review, that's what you would have seen. Trump's not trustworthy because he picked Scott Bessent. And I'm like, well, I'd love to initially believe you, but why did he pick Scott Bessent? And then I find tariffs. And all of a sudden, that piece clicks in with all the rest of what I've heard Trump talk about and say, holy cow, he may actually just be lining up a tariff task force to make some major changes in America on that subject.
Make tariffs great again.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, Scott Bessent makes sense to me. Maybe I'm wrong, but that seems to click in, especially when you combine it with Howard Lutnick and what he said before. I understand it and I see it, and now I'm potentially excited about it because that would be a radical change that we desperately need.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard. Like, I really hate the internet constantly talking, ooh, no offense. You and I have both said this. You've probably said it too. The whole Donald Trump is just out here playing 4D chess. I really hate it when people just excuse everything.
I don't say that.
I do. I've said it before because it's true. But there are a lot of people who abuse that, in my mind, just to excuse, no, trust me, Trump has it all under control. Right. It's part of the plan. I'm like, you're just a Trump apologist.
It's like softcore QAnon.
It really is.
Yeah.
And I don't do the softcore QAnon thing or the hardcore QAnon thing or any of that. But
I do the ultra hardcore QAnon thing.
Ultra hardcore MAGA Q. There are, now we're going to get shadow banned for that. But do they shadow ban anymore? Is that just outright ban you?
I don't know.
But looking at it, truly often there is a very outside the box reason why Trump is moving a direction he is. And everyone in the media who's just like running around nipping at their heels has no clue. But it's not because I'm so smart and Trump is so smart and I figured it out. It's because ideologically, they just have these giant blinders on where they can only see the one thing and they're not paying attention to what it looks like. So like when Trump talks about tariffs in the 1890s, my brain turns on and I start thinking. A lot of the sycophants in the media can't even possibly function on that. And I'll put that at the right-wing media too. They can't focus on that. They can only focus on their hatred of this one thing, and it's like, it doesn't make sense, so it must be evil. And I thought, it's not that he's playing 4D chess and you're stupid, it's that he's playing chess and you're over here yelling about your coloring project. Like, you're in a different universe altogether. So, it's an interesting set of people we've pulled together. What do you think? Do you see? I see RFK begins his meetings next week with the Senate. That'll be interesting to see. As Linda McMahon was walking around, someone said something about education. They were yelling out questions to her in the hallway, and she said, we're sending it back to the states, and then just kept walking. And I thought, I don't know what exactly that means, but I like the sound of it. Like, that's pretty cool. Like, no, I'm going to send these decisions back down.
That's why he picked somebody with no education experience, so she would not know what to do and just delegate it to, federalize it.
Well, see, and that's part of my enjoyment of some of these folks. Linda McMahon is completely outside the education establishment. The education establishment is the problem, not knowing what you're doing. Pete Hegseth is totally outside of the cultured foreign policy political class that runs the DOD.
Right.
He's an army dude with a bunch of tattoos and a bunch of cool crusade style stuff.
Yeah.
Like, he understands the military. He does not understand the military industrial. No, I should say he is a product of the military. He is not a product of the military industrial complex. The people running the military have not been military men and women for a long time. Like, there are generals all abounding and people in uniform, but that does not, in my mind at this point, a military person make. Because we have a lot of people who have never seen combat, don't understand it, but they have been trained through all of the foreign policy, neocon, defense industrial complex, contract, different things. So picking people completely outside the system may itself be one of the best victories because they'll just look at it from an outsider, like Linda McMahon. Why the heck are we doing that way? Well, because insert 50 years of policy. No, that's a stupid way to do it. Do it this way. Like, that might be the greatest gift to the Department of Education is Linda McMahon not having any background in education. Because the system needs to die.
Yeah.
What else you got? We didn't talk about the big news of the day.
Times Man of the Year.
Times Man of the Year and one of the most awesome photographs of President Donald J. Trump I've ever seen. Saw the behind the scenes somewhere. I gotta pull that up and save it. But yeah, Time named Donald Trump Person of the Year. Between him and Greta Thunberg, I heard, who's not as cute as she once was. She's obnoxious and old. No, I'm kidding. Person of the Year Time. He opened the New York Stock Exchange this morning, rang the bell, walked around on the floor. These are some of my favorite videos. If you haven't gone and watched them, you should. Just hop onto X or something. Because you hear like all the traders and people running around the floor. We love you! Dude, you're our man. You are our favorite. We are so excited that you're back. Like, the financial people, even Jim Cramer was sucking up, asking for things today. He's such an obnoxious twit. He really is. But anyway, I saw he got RFK. Jim Cramer got RFK, cornered for a second, and he asked him, and he just said something, and RFK's just kind of looking at him. He goes, "What's the question, Jim?" It's just really, what's the question? That's so he repeats it shorter, and it was funny to see. But Trump's back, baby.
Yep.
Back in New York, back across the board.
America is back.
America is back. There's a lot of exciting stuff happening. A lot of really good things going on. And I think that the cabinet position lineup really is there. And that's someone here in the Rumble chat, Gwen, is saying Trump's brilliant. He doesn't understand what we need. Doesn't only understand what we need, perhaps understands how to do it. I think that how to do it is the key part we've been missing. We have a lot of people who are right on the issues, but they're totally ineffective at getting there. So
yeah.
Oh, and the other big news of the week. You talked about Russ.
Which one?
Yeah,
This week's been crazy.
It has been crazy.
Israel invading Syria.
Yes, well, there's all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Everyone, who hasn't bombed Syria? Syria's even bombed Syria this week. It's been a little bit crazy. Assad, yeah.
I heard he's starting a podcast. So.
Oh my gosh.
You, me, Assad, and Matt Gaetz now all have the same job.
You know, everyone thinks they can make it on a podcast. We say as we sit here on Rumble. No, I am super pumped about Russ Vote over at it's Vote, right? Not Vote. Vote. Yeah, Russ Vote over at Office of Management and Budget. First of all, he will pass the confirmation process. He already has. He's already done this job.
Right.
But since coming out of office in the Trump administration the first time, he went on, what is it, the Center for Renewing America? American Renewal Center. I forget which order everything goes in. Russ is one of the minds behind Project 2025, which is part giant white paper that paid a lot of people just to sit there and write things, but also part really interesting ideas on how to completely dismantle, rearrange the executive blob in America. But Russ is one of the goodies in there because Russ understands Russ is a fellow Christian nationalist. He knows how we ought to use government in its right size to do righteously. And he knows how to get there. But Russ has tapped Ed to be his chief of staff. So Mr. Ed Martin, president here at Phyllis Schlafly Eagles, is moving on from PSE to OMB.
Yep.
So that'll be fun. Keep an eye on that. If you have it, go over. It's EagleEd. Is it at eagleedmartin.substack.com? Go find him. He wrote up a piece on that, and I'm sure there'll be a lot more coming forward. But I mean, Ed's always an Eagle, obviously. So who knows how that changes?
He's just flying a little higher now.
Flying a little higher, soaring above it. But that is a big piece of news out of the Phyllis Schlafly Eagle world that you really want to make sure you keep an eye on. So if you're just a follower of Caucus, go over at EagleEdMartin on Twitter or X, and also on Substack. You'll find him there and follow along because there's going to be some good stuff coming there that you want to see. OMB is going to be on fire. What do the young people? What do you say? Lit. OMB is going to be lit. Lit fam.
I need a new co-host.
Maybe it's me who needs a new co-host.
Oh yeah. Okay.
We can have. Hold on. What do we have? We'll have. We can have two different versions. We can have Caucus for the Boomer wannabes, which I guess is me, and then we can have Caucus for the, Zoomers.
I guess so. Yeah. We could try that.
Dueling caucuses.
Dueling caucuses.
Something like that.
Caucus fighting.
Close us out, Mason. It's time. We've spent an hour. We don't need to waste these people's time anymore.
Thank you once again for joining us on Unauthorized Caucus with Ryan Haidt and Mason Mohan. You will see us again next week on Thursday at noon, because if it's Thursday and if it's noon and you have gone to unauthorizedcaucus.com to get the email reminder, what time will it be?
It will be caucus time. Have a good week, everybody.